Hello, Exiles, Talkative Try here with potentially my biggest Path of Exile 2 video ever. I've gathered every single ounce of the biggest new Path of Exile 2 information that dropped today, whether it's officially from Grinding Your Games Live, the Q&A with Ziggy D, creator videos from the surprise 3rd LA event, articles that just released containing exclusive knowledge, you name it. It's the first of at least 3 videos covering GGG Live. The second shall cover all the tiny details, and the third summarizes the 2-hour Ziggy D interview with Jonathan Rogers and Mark Roberts. The enormous surprises and confirmed new though, all of it is here in this video. We are about to dive into every juicy tidbit. First, an overview of everything you're about to see and hear about. All 7, I repeat 7 endgame systems, including the completely insane new Atlas, all 12 Ascendancy classes coming in early access, 2 for each of the 6 classes, item system changes and crafting, including our first look at the crafting bench, CGI and in-game cinematics in PoE2, the philosophical roadmap for Path of Exile 2 early access, a look into all the skill gems that we're getting in early access, and miscellaneous big news like being able to purchase your own unique item design for Path of Exile 2 and more. As always, timestamps and sources are in the description, but this is probably a bad idea for me to say. You should just go and watch the 1.5 or so hour reveal that Grinding Gear Games did, in addition or instead of my video. They break it down so well, it's fascinating to watch, to hear, to listen to Jonathan and Mark breaking down all the effort that they put into Path of Exile 2 early access into making it into the best possible product for us players. It's thrilling. I absolutely enjoyed the live stream today. I streamed the entire thing and people were popping off in the chat, and internally I wanted to shout every few seconds, but I held it in. If you'd like a breakdown though that is faster than that 1.5 hour video and you don't want to scour the internet for all the extra information, this is the video for you. But before we officially leap in, please like the video if you enjoy my content and subscribe to the channel for everything Path of Exile 2 related. It's free and the best way to help me grow. Thank you. Exiles, it's time. It's finally time. Let's delve on in. We are kicking off this video with a breakdown of the endgame systems, yes, plural, systems of Path of Exile 2. Let me open this up by saying Grinding Gear Games completely pivoted their studio about 7 months ago and said, hey, instead of finishing out the 3 acts of content and releasing early access with all 6 acts and a bare bones endgame, why don't we just refocus all our efforts onto making a banger endgame and releasing with 3 acts, then refocusing on the final 3 acts during the early access period. All ARPGs always launch with a lackluster endgame, and that's where the majority of blasters and people who thoroughly enjoy the game spend their time. So they really wanted to make it great. They didn't want to end up like other ARPGs, wherein people reach the end of the game, they beat the campaign and say, what next? And then leave and never come back. That's not going to happen with Path of Exile 2 because we have 7 distinct endgame systems to talk about. I'm overviewing them right here, right now. First up, the Atlas. This is a classic Path of Exile 1 system that has completely been redone for Path of Exile 2. In it, you are no longer going into an imaginary world, into outer space and exploring maps. You are exploring Rayclast, and the Atlas map is infinitely expanding. You heard that right. It never stops. You keep on traversing it endlessly, finding new areas, new boss fights, new secrets to find. And that's another thing I gotta point out. There's so many secrets that we get to find upon early access, and Mark and Jonathan were very clear in pointing that out. They dropped bomb after bomb about the Atlas constantly and the rest of Endgame, and then said, but there's a whole bunch of other cool stuff that you need to find out yourself, such as all the unique items that the pinnacle bosses drop in Path of Exile 2. That's right, Path of Exile 2 early access launches with multiple pinnacle bosses, including a single uber pinnacle boss that no one knows about essentially. We didn't see it, they didn't give us any hints about it, except the fact that here is its node on the Atlas. You're going to need to beat these uber versions of act bosses and their lieutenants to get keys to enter the pinnacle bosses arena. Nothing else is known about this boss, and they are not telling us anything. They want to see our reactions to it live. But Mark Roberts, the designer of all bosses essentially in Path of Exile 2, said this is the hardest Path of Exile 2 content in the game. I cannot wait to find it. Diving into the exacts of the Atlas is kind of a big ask for a overview video. Essentially, what's happening is we no longer have maps, we have waystones, and we can edit waystones much like maps, but prefixes give us positive bonuses like increases to experience, and suffixes give negative bonuses that also help us in some way, such as making sure that the items are rarer and the like, increasing pack size, right? When we open these waystones, we go into a completely new and different terrain. These endgame tile sets, much like Path of Exile 1's endgame tile sets, are not just stolen outright from the campaign, they are also highly edited, they are highly randomized, and every single one has a completely random set of monsters within it. There are 400 distinct monster types upon the early access launch, and they make up all the packs within the map, the magic packs, the rare packs, and the like. And the goal of these maps is to either kill the map boss or all the rare monsters inside the map. And I say or because not every map or waystone, I'm going to have to get used to that, has a boss. Jonathan said about 1 in every 4 waystones will have a boss. But due to the way the Atlas works, where you're exploring it yourself and you have many options available, if you so choose, you can chain together waystones that have boss fights as their main objective to complete. Additionally, waystones in Path of Exile 2 or maps in Path of Exile 2 are one and done. If you die in a waystone, you can no longer continue down that path. You lose everything inside the map, it's gone. You can portal out, you do get 6 portals, so you can try to escape the arena, you can take your loot out, but if you die in the map, that waystone is gone and it's gone forever. You'll need to progress through the Atlas in a different way. Periodically throughout the Atlas, you can find these towers that you can use buffs on, these tablets, to create special league mechanic or endgame mechanic effects around the tower. And that brings us to some of the endgame systems alongside the Atlas. We have 4 returning, revamped, and improved leagues from Path of Exile 1 coming into Path of Exile 2. They are Breach, Expedition, Ritual, and Delirium. All of them have pinnacle encounters. Breach has a brand new pinnacle boss fight. Expedition also has a boss fight, but it is Olroth from Path of Exile 1, probably revamped with a new moveset. Ritual also has a boss fight, the King in the Mist, probably revamped from Path of Exile 1. And Delirium once again has the Simulacrum. However, it appears to be very different than it is in Path of Exile 1, and I'm wondering if finally we'll get to fight Hang Mazu. Something that they've done with all endgame systems in Path of Exile 2 is made sure each of them have very distinct rewards that can only be found by completing that type of content. I will give you one example here. Breaches can drop catalysts, which can be used to buff your rings and add quality to them. Additionally, breaches can drop breach rings, which have interesting, powerful implicits, such as the ability to allow you to increase their quality up to 50% instead of the usual 20%. That is massive, especially combined with certain modifiers like life. You can get upwards of 160 life from a single ring. That is very powerful, and what we're seeing in Path of Exile 2 is the combination of a lot of different league mechanics and rewards from Path of Exile 1 into Path of Exile 2 endgame systems. Another example is the fact that now Blight Oils from Path of Exile 1 have been rolled into Delirium rewards in Path of Exile 2, and you can use these Delirium rewards to buff your amulets and pick out notables from the passive skill tree and place them on your amulet. Then in Ritual, there are special omens, which essentially allow you to deterministically craft certain things, metacraft certain things, but we'll get into that in a little bit when we talk about crafting. There are also a whole bunch of other sub-content types on the Atlas itself, like strongboxes, like revamped shrines, and I'm sure lots of other hidden stuff. But Breach, Expedition, Ritual, and Delirium, in addition to the base Atlas endgame story. Yes, there was also a story, which we have no spoilers about, is what we are launching early access with. It is a tremendous amount. I could not be more excited for the Atlas. And there are 2 systems outside of it as well. These are trials, and they are also standalone endgame systems. In the early game, we use these trials to ascend. We'll talk about ascension in just a moment. But in endgame, these are essentially sequels to 2 beloved leagues from Path of Exile 1. The first being the Forbidden Sanctum, the second being Ultimatum. The first is the Trial of the Sakema, which unlocks in Act 2, and then you can progress through it in Path of Exile 2's endgame. It is essentially an upgraded Forbidden Sanctum, cranked to 15. It's insane, in depth, lots of different room variety, boss variety. It's a roguelite in Path of Exile 2. It uses an honor system, so you have a limited amount of times you can get hit. You get boons and debuffs on your character as you progress through, gaining up those afflictions, but you can get tremendous rewards. There's a whole relic progression system. There are unique relics. There is a no-hit run instantly in the game that probably rewards an absolutely busted tier 0 unique. And most important of all, it just looks fun. Then there is the other standalone trial, the Trial of Chaos at Endgame, which is a revamped, upgraded sequel to Ultimatum. You are progressing through the Trial Master's domain, creating more and more despicable circumstances to fight through. Every time you progress, you get the chance to walk away with all your rewards, or up the difficulty and get more rewards. And this also has its own special bosses and its own special pinnacle boss, just like the Trial of the Sakema does. I forgot to mention that. These places also have boss fights that are unique to them. How awesome is that? The Trial of Chaos also has unique rewards, including Val Orbs, which once again are very powerful in crafting, and we will get to those soon enough. Oh, did I mention you specifically get jewels from the Trial of Sakema in Path of Exile 2? And jewels are an integral part of the passive skill tree. They aren't off the path anymore, it seems. They are basically travel nodes, just like the attribute nodes. They can be worked into your build without needing to get a few extra points that are kind of meaningless, like in Path of Exile 1. And those radius jewels that are uniques in Path of Exile 1 are a base in Path of Exile 2. And you can roll them to have huge radiuses, and they affect passives in that radius, increasing their volatility. Absolutely phenomenal. Exiles, I didn't even mention the fact that every time you complete one of these Pinnacle Atlas encounters, you unlock a special Atlas skill tree specifically for that type of content. When you beat the Pinnacle Breach boss, you unlock a Breach tree. When you beat the unnamed Pinnacle Uber boss of the game, you unlock, I suppose, an Atlas wide tree. Another awesome change. You have unique trees for every content type that always applies to that content type as you explore the wide-reaching Atlas. Plus, Pinnacle bosses have tiers. When you fight it at the lowest tier, they may only drop 3 particular uniques that only drop from them. But if you fight them at tier 4, they will drop their entire unique pool, or they can drop their entire unique item pool. Very powerful special items, with the more powerful items dropping the harder the boss gets. And the boss doesn't just get more hit points. The boss changes the fight. It uses different moves. It uses the same moves in different ways and the like. And at the highest tier, tier 4, you will have modular unique drops. Stuff like Forbidden Flesh and Flame in Path of Exile 1, or Watcher's Eyes, which are random, unique items that can roll very special properties. Wow. I know that there were some things that I was probably missing about Endgame. There was some awesome stuff in Ziggy D's interview, but it was just tiny tidbits. I guess I'll bring up one here. In Endgame maps, when you die in a map when you're in multiplayer, you cannot revive. That's kind of crazy. I love to hear it. It adds stakes to those map or waystone encounters. That's going to take some getting used to. Seriously. I cannot wait to see what all these pinnacle bosses that they've hidden look like. I can't wait to see all the other hidden mechanics that are in the Atlas, what the story is. Path of Exile 2 Early Access is launching with an endgame story. It's going to be amazing to experience it live with all of you. I will be live streaming every second of it, and I will be playing Well, I don't know what I'm playing yet because all of you are determining it because we hit our subscriber goal over on Twitch. Let's take a look at what I might be playing by diving into each of the 12 Ascendancy classes we're getting with early access launch, with 24 more to come. But how could we talk about Ascendancy classes without talking about Ascension? It's very simple. There are two ways to ascend in Path of Exile 2. One is the Trial of the Sakema, which is basically an improved Sanctum from Path of Exile 1 with brand new content and the like. And the other is a revamped Ultimatum. It's the Trial of Chaos. You can ascend either of these ways. You unlock it in Act 2 and Act 3, and if you fail one and you don't like one, well, then you can do the other to initially ascend, but you need to complete both distinctly, per my understanding, to get all your points. Every trial you complete, you get 2 Ascendancy points to spend in your Ascendancy tree for your specific class. And yes, it is confirmed that there will be 6 player character classes upon early access launch, with more upcoming, like the Druid, which was mentioned first as the one upcoming as soon as possible, and then the Huntress. And these 6 classes, as you all know, are the Monk, the Warrior, the Mercenary, the Witch, the Sorceress, and the Ranger. Let's start with the Ranger's Ascendancy classes. They are both returning from Path of Exile 1, but they are completely revamped. We have the Pathfinder, which gives you a bunch of skills that allow you to throw different types of concoctions. You have some passives that give you bonuses to spreading poison and dealing more poison damage. You also have a skill that gives you 30% less movement speed penalty when using skills while moving. That is insane for ranged. And then you also have a few other surprises up your alley that we do not know about. It looks like you have quite a few choices here. Note the flask choices. It looks like it is a 5-choice node, and we know of 2 of them, Fulminating Concoction and Bleeding Concoction. It appears there are 3 other concoction types that we can choose as a Pathfinder. Then we have another returning classic, the Deadeye for the Ranger, which has a bunch of stuff revolved around firing projectiles. Remember, no Ascendancy class node is tied directly to a weapon though, so you can use this with other things that relate to projectiles. We have Endless Munitions, which grants you skills, fire, and additional projectile. You gain Tailwind on skill use with Gathering Winds, and you lose it when you're hit. This improves your action speed by quite a bit, we presume. And then you get Eagle Eyes as well, which means you have no accuracy penalty at a distance, so you don't need to spend any points on accuracy in Path of Exile 2. Then let's move to the Witch's 2 Ascendancies, which just look ridiculous. We will start with the Infernalist, which not only gives the demon form this succubus that we pointed out as an Ascendancy teaser in one of those last teasers before this big news drop, it also gives you the skill Summon Infernal Hound, which gives you a loyal dog companion to light your foes on fire and take tremendous hits for you. The demon form just looks absolutely lit. You literally fly around using your wings. You gain a ton more damage and cast speed, but you take more damage the longer you are in the form. It looks metal, and I think the community is going to vote for me to play a witch. Hopefully they choose the Infernalist Ascendancy as well if I hit 400 Twitch subscribers. The other witch Ascendancy is the Blood Mage, which just revolves around, well, blood, leeching life with your spells, dealing more damage the more life that you have. So we have a life stacking potential build right here, using a special skill called Life Remnants, which causes monsters to drop life orbs on the ground when they die. And assuredly, it does a bunch of other wild stuff. Now, I came up with the Sanguinist in my Ascendancy battle, so I am super happy to see the Blood Mage in Path of Exile 2. Then let's move on over to the Monk. We have the Acolyte of Chayula, which turns you into more than just worshipping the Dreamer. You are literally buying into Breach as a way of life. You are embracing the demons from that realm, and you are embracing the darkness. This seems to be focused around chaos damage, chaos resistance, not being able to recharge certain things. It looks like this one is really out there, and that is something that Mark Roberts said during the Q&A with Sicky D. He wants to make sure that every single class has one Ascendancy that is just out of this world. Nobody would have predicted it. They go wild with it, and then they have at least one Ascendancy that is in line with the typical class fantasy. The Acolyte of Chayula, judging from these notes that we see right here, is the one that is all wacky and peculiar and way out of line. The other Monk Ascendancy is the Invoker, which essentially turns you into Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender. And then we have what I think might be my favorites in the Mercenary. First, we have the Gemling Legionnaire, which seems to be a completely upgraded Scion, where you are building your own Ascendancy. It gives you 3 additional skill slots. It improves the quality of your gems. It increases your maximum resistances per number of gem that you are using, and it helps you quickly adapt to the type of gems that you'd like to use through adaptive capability. Attribute requirements of gems can be satisfied by your highest attribute. There's probably going to be a ton of paths to use here, and we haven't even seen 1, 2, 3, 4 of the large nodes. And the other mercenary ascendancy is the Witch Hunter, which is exactly what you think. It specializes in killing undead and demons. It has a node that specifically relates to them, Zealous Inquisition. 10% chance for enemies you kill to explode, dealing 100% of their maximum life as physical damage. Chance is doubled against undead and demons. And then it has Judge, Jury, and Executioner, which is Decimating Strike, which gives you a percentage chance to deal 30% of a monster's health with your first hit. And this also applies to bosses. I kid you not. Next up, the Warrior Ascendancies, the first of which is the War Bringer. This one heavily seems to relate to war cries and ancestral spirits and totems and encasing yourself in jade as a massive defense. There's still a lot to be seen here. 5 different large nodes. I cannot wait to explore them. And then we have the Titan, which is an awesome Ascendancy node name. We still have a lot to explore here as well. It appears that this is dealing with massive stuns and massive damage. Look at surprising strength, 40% more damage against heavy stunned enemies. And finally, we have the 2 Sorceress Ascendancies, the first of which is the Stormweaver, used to be called the Arcanist, which just focuses wholly on elemental destruction with ice and lightning. It also grants Elemental Storm as a skill, which leaves some sort of random crazy storm around monsters when you hit a critical on that monster. And remember, Ascendancy skills can be supported. That was confirmed during the Q&A with Ziggy D once more. And the final Sorceress Ascendancy and the final Ascendancy that we're looking at right now is the Chronomancer, which literally has the ability to pause the game for enemies. I'm not kidding. You can freeze the entire game and act like time stop in Dungeons and Dragons. It's so cool. And according to the game directors, all these Ascendancies have custom dialogue options and encounter options with bosses and NPCs, and one of them includes facing someone who can manipulate time, and if you use this freeze time ability on them, the boss has a special dialogue line that triggers. He stops your time instead, redirects it back at you and says, "Ha, you cannot do that to me. I control time." Wow. I don't know what else to say besides wow. Seriously, there's so many options here, so many things to build around just with the passives that we've seen here. Ascendancies change the way your character looks, the way they act, the way they talk with other characters, the way that other characters talk to them, and they give us near unlimited possibilities to build on. We probably haven't seen all the skills that Ascendancies are going to grant us. There's still a bunch in the dark, and we get to discover them all when early access launches on December 6th. Now let's talk about crafting in Path of Exile 2, and let's begin with something that was not shown during this presentation, and that's the fact that the crafting bench is still in the game. I saw this in a video from Empyrean Gaming. He was at an LA event 2 weeks ago when he captured this. It has confirmed that the crafting bench is still in the game and incredibly powerful. The way it works, though, seems to be a little bit more intricate than in Path of Exile 1, where you need to break down certain materials, like maximum life materials, to then craft maximum life onto gear. I'm not too sure about that. I want to get my hands on it. I want to be able to explain it better than that, but it looks like the crafting bench is in the game, and it functions very differently than in Path of Exile 1, just like all the other crafting systems in Path of Exile 2. Let me tell you, now crafting is locked behind a whole bunch of different items and league mechanics in the game. What am I talking about? Well, Essence returns in Path of Exile 2, and now they appear randomly in areas essentially. They drop different types of essences that grant berry-specific modifiers. And they are excellent for getting a few specific mods on your items that you would like. You can start with a normal item, use an essence to make it magic, slam it with one very powerful modifier that you know that you want, and then you can do the same, turning it from magic to rare, and then completing that craft with other currencies like exalted orbs. And currencies like Exalted Orbs and Chaos Orbs and all the like are much more common in Path of Exile 2, because grinding gear games wants you to use these currencies. They don't want you to hoard them or just not use them. So they've boosted the drop rates of pretty much every single currency in the game, and you should be finding Exalted Orbs in Act 2 very quickly, and they expect you to use those Exalted Orbs to make better items. That is one of the big things in Path of Exile 2. You are getting less items and you are getting more currency items to craft on those items, and they expect you to actually care about the items that you're getting and crafting on. There's a bunch of other crafting systems in the game, seemingly like omens as well, that you get from Ritual, which essentially say while you have this omen in your inventory, the next time you use an exalted orb on an item, you will add a suffix or a prefix or a bunch of other different options. An annul orb. If you annul an item, you will annul a prefix. They said there's a bunch of different ways to use these omens to meta craft your items, and that's pretty cool. And then there are Val orbs, which corrupt your items. They have the potential to add an enchantment, an implicit, re-roll the ranges of your modifiers, including doing 0.8 to 1.2 times the modifiers, ignoring the caps on them, so you can go even higher than you possibly could just basically rolling on them. And they can also add sockets to your gear. Yes, sockets have returned in Path of Exile 2, but now they are just like runes or gems from the Diablo games, where you plant sockets into your gear and then you put items into those sockets. And those items do very specific things like increasing your cold resistance, attack speed, and all the like. All the different item types have different numbers of sockets that can be held within them. We're going to find out a lot more about that in early access, but with Val Orbs, you can get an extra socket on top of the normal amount for each piece of gear. This part of the presentation completely blew my mind, and it just seems like there's unlimited possibilities now with crafting, and they've encouraged people more than ever to give it a go themselves with all of these tools and options available. And if you want to craft with something specific, you know exactly where to go in the game. Next, it is confirmed cinematics will be in Path of Exile 2, with the introduction to the game having a full-on Blizzard quality cinematic that is CGI. It contains the Hooded One, the Iron Count, and an epic encounter, voice acting and all that we get to see upon first logging into the game. Then, when you transition from one act to the next, there was in-game cinematics trying to explain kind of what is happening as you progress from one act to the next, which is an absolute win. The entire game itself, as well, is more cinematic in scope. Boss intros and outros are flamboyant and fantastic, and they focus on your characters, and there's unique dialogue for all the different character classes and ascendancies and situations that you find yourself in. They don't want you to go from the beginning of the game to the end of the game and not know what's going on, and that's phenomenal. They also said during the interview with Ziggy D that there are a lot of surprises incoming in the latter half of the campaign that we'll just have to wait and see for when those come out. Then, my fellow exiles, they confirmed that there are hundreds of skill gems in the early access, and more are very close to being done. So we will consistently be getting more skills in the game, which is phenomenal. Not only for the weapon types that we currently don't have access to, but for the weapon types that we do have access to, like maces, like bows, like occult and elemental skills. Stuff will continue to roll in as it's ready, and that's what I'd like to touch on now. The roadmap for Path of Exile 2 Early Access. They touched on this. They see this as lasting for at least 6 months, maximum about a year. They want to launch Path of Exile 2 Early Access in 2025. They do not want it to last for more than a year, so we are expecting to see the full release of 1.0 in 2025. Is that actually going to happen? I think so. I think we will see it in December 2025 with a new refresh set of supporter packs and the like right around Christmas, and it's going to be absolutely incredible. They also said that 1.0 will have double the content currently in early access, not just for the acts, of course, but Endgame as well, which just blows my mind. Seriously. The amount of content that is already in the game and the amount that they want to add is stupendous. I cannot wait to get the Druid, the Huntress, the Shadow, the Templar, get that Paladin in there, and all the rest of the stuff that's not in the game currently in the game. They also said the cadence of updates should be rather swift. They hope it's less than 3 months before each major patch. And there will be League-like resets within Path of Exile 2 Early Access, but there will be no wipes. Once early access ends, all early access characters will go onto an early access standard realm. They will not be deleted, and you will be able to play them forevermore. They will just be separated out from the regular standard realm that is built once Path of Exile 2 launches officially into its free-to-play 1.0 version. Now that I've mentioned money a little bit, yes, Path of Exile 2 currently costs $30 to get into for the early access, but upon 1.0 launch, it is free to play. There are a new set of supporter packs on the store. I've been doing giveaways on my live streams. If you'd like some giveaway codes, make sure you tune in, even some supporter packs. But the highest cost pack right now is $480, and it appears, given some text on the latest Q&A, there will be something more. Something costlier, I'm presuming, because they will be offering the ability for you to design your own unique item and or divination card in Path of Exile 2 for a price. These will be limited in number. I have no idea how much they're going to cost right now. My guess is 1,000, 2,000, maybe even higher, because lots of people who make a lot of money play Path of Exile 1 and 2. Exiles, I think I hit on every single big thing announced today from GGG Live and all the articles and videos that I watched and read. The consensus from everyone who had their hands on Path of Exile 2 a few weeks ago in LA is that it is the greatest ARPG ever made. I see nobody speaking ill of it. People who hated it before, who had never played it, people who had played it before, hated it. Now they played it in its current version. They love it. They are blown away by the Atlas, and that's great. I don't necessarily care too much about their opinions. I care about mine and yours and whether or not we're having fun. And oh my goodness, Grinding Gear Games is making sure that we will have fun upon the early access release, which happens in just 2 weeks from the day I release this video. I cannot believe it's almost here. We are going on quite the journey, Exiles. I am so ready to hop into it with all of you. Please make sure, if you like my Path of Exile 2 content, to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the sub notification bell if you want to see everything that drops, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for your support, my fellow exile. Hala Hura.